Hello and welcome to another episode of Pemberley and Beyond. I'm Kat, your guide through the ever-expanding world of Jane Austen-inspired fanfiction. Expect new lives, new loves, fresh drama, and the tropes that just keep turning up, rather like Wickham at the door of a wealthy young heiress. This episode has been a rather serendipitous affair, as I was about to review the first book in this series, The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet, Witch, by Melinda Taub. But as I sat down to start making notes as to what to talk about, I saw that I'd been approved for an advance review copy of the second novel in the series, The Shocking Experiments of Miss Mary Bennet, which was recently published on the 7th of October of 2025. In case you're interested in finding out how to get approved for an advance review copy, you can check out my post on the subject on my book blog, wildnightin.wordpress.com, which I've decided to bring back from the beyond. But enough about me reviving my blog. Today I'm going to be talking about a different sort of revivification. Not of an inanimate object, but of a human. That's right. It is time to roll the music and introduce you to the blurb of The Shocking Experiments of Miss Mary Bennet. An utterly fantastical and undeniably queer melding of Pride and Prejudice and Frankenstein that recasts Mary Bennet as an insatiable scientist, one who creates a monster in an attempt to save herself from spinsterdom. I'm going to kick off by summarising the plot more fully, because whilst the blurb tantalises, I feel that more context is needed in order to appreciate the twists that Taub introduced in this novel. Please expect spoilers from the off. The novel reframes Mary, the oft-ignored Bennet sister of Pride and Prejudice, as a secret scientist who quietly conducts experiments in a hidden attic laboratory. As her older sisters wed and her prospects narrow, Mary resolves to create a new path for herself by reanimating life, a decidedly Frankenstein-inspired gambit that draws direct thematic links to Shelley's novel. To fund her work and cloak its origins, Mary enlists her uncle's clerk, Septimus Pike, as her business agent, allowing her to sell newly invented dyes while preserving her anonymity. Dyes with mysterious extra properties. But Pike turns out to be a cad. He has been selling her dyes at very high rates and giving Mary the least money possible for her creations. When she starts to suspect that something is afoot and cancels their business partnership, he uses the cover of a midnight storm to break into her laboratory and steal her formulae. Mary disturbs him, they fight, and he tries to kill her. By a twist of fate, she accidentally kills him in self-defense. In an even more Frankenstein-coded moment, she uses lightning and her machine to bring him back from the dead. At first, all is well, but then events spiral beyond her control. Mary accidentally unleashes a malevolent entity she struggles to contain, thereby echoing the hubris and consequences found in Frankenstein. Pike himself becomes a more complicated character as his fortunes change and questions of trust and motive emerge. In her efforts to suppress the growing threat from him, Mary forms an intellectual and emotional bond with a fellow secretive scientist, whose name I'm not going to mention, but whose presence blurs boundaries between friendship and romance. Through this growing relationship, Mary's internal conflict deepens. She must choose whether to seek societal acceptance, as she is, or to embrace authenticity, even if it means charting a dangerous, unconventional life. In the end, Mary confronts the cost of creation, the risk of vulnerability, and must reconcile her desire for independence with the possibility of love, all while wrestling with whether she can truly control what she has wrought. I'm going to kick off with trope number 1, which I feel shows just how brilliant this novel is. The "wait, which colour pill?" trope, more commonly known as the red pill, blue pill trope. If you're not familiar with The Matrix, allow me to quote Morpheus, a character in The Matrix, as he explains this trope.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So, how does it relate to the shocking experiments of Miss Mary Bennet? Well, as I mentioned, Mary reanimates a man she kills in self-defense. When he's brought back from the dead, he is, let us say, altered in some ways. Now, as I also mentioned, Mary has been making dyes that require blood from people. I promise this is less macabre than it sounds. The blood is what gives the dyes their hue, and she has to give him these dye-based serums in order for him to stay human and not devolve into some sort of mindless feral beast. Along the way, she discovers that the best way of rendering this previously disagreeable fellow marginally more amenable is to dose him with serum from a certain person. Again, no spoilers. The colour of this serum is blue. Septimus Pike, on the other hand, prefers the effects of two different serums, the red and the black. Wow, inadvertent Stendhal reference. Even though these latter two colours make him less happy and far more feral, and I use that in the purist sense, not in the Gen Z slang sense, he still insists on being dosed with the red and the black serums. Now, this is where I found the trope became very clever and very meta. This is also where I fear I pulled a Dwarves of Moria and delved way too deep. Don't worry though, I'm not going to drag you down the mineshaft with me. We're going to stay comparatively surface level. So, this novel is very much a gothic horror novel from Mary's perspective, not least when her creation of Pike, as I keep saying once again, be warned, here be spoilers if you're not familiar with the plot of Frankenstein, Pike starts trying to kill her. But when I thought about the novel from Pike's perspective, I realised that this novel is also a black pill horror novel. Now, I don't believe this is actually a real genre, but I am not familiar with the deepest abysses of the dark web, so who knows? What I'm trying to say, though, is the horror cuts both ways in this novel. Here we have a man who from the start passes as an incel, by which I mean he's pleasing enough to the eye but lacks the fortune to attract wealthy women. He makes a lot of edgy and dark jokes involving death, and he ultimately expects Mary to not only be thrilled that he has shown an interest in her, but also proceeds to essentially tell her that she's not that hot anyway after she's rejected him. Like many of the men's rights batch of this day and age, he quite literally profits off of her whilst giving her below the bare minimum in recompense. For him, his horror story is being overlooked and laughed at by the women in his neighbourhood, and then being forcibly blue-pilled by a woman. And I know I sound as though I am reading way too far into it with the blue and red pill or serum theory, but I have my quote. There's one stage when he and Mary argue, and he agrees with her that the blue serum makes him happier than either the red or the black serums. But, like many young men in the incel ideology, he equates this blue serum-induced joy with lies and being corralled into life as some sort of human sheep, completely at Mary's whims. And yes, the novel shows that when he is blue serumed, he does become more malleable. And yes, I agree that being forced to live at another's mercy is a dark, dark way to survive. However, the only reason he has ended up in this position is because Mary killed him in self-defense when he was trying to murder her to steal her life's work. It is only through her goodness that he's been brought back to life. Pike, viewed through this red-pilled incel lens, read to me like the anti-Jekyll and Hyde, in love with plumbing the depths of the modern masculine experience. He could have become Jekyll, but has fallen in love with the dark glamour of hustle culture. Mary's serums can be sold at great profit as dye colours, and he chooses, instead of treating her as an equal business partner who he could have risen with, as a cash cow. And when she stands her ground, this leads him to decide to murder and pilfer and choose petty revenge instead of choosing the moral high ground time and again. And as I said before, I don't know whether this was an intentional parallel in the novel, but considering Taub's screenwriting background, I believe that it is. Feel free to leave a comment with your take on it, or consign it to the dustbin of your memory, whichever you prefer. Now, on to the second trope, the mad scientist archetype. At the heart of the story is Mary Bennet, traditionally the quiet, bookish sister of Pride and Prejudice. In Taub's reimagining, Mary transforms into a determined scientist, challenging societal expectations. Her opening letter is addressed to a leading male scientist with whom she has been corresponding. As she herself acknowledges, a woman and man who are not related but are regularly corresponding is absolutely scandalous in the purest Regency sense of the word. Her pursuit of scientific knowledge and autonomy leads her to experiment with reanimating the dead, embodying the classic mad scientist trope, again as taken from Frankenstein. However, throughout the course of the novel, her character development adds intrigue. And finally, onto the third trope, the found family trope. Mary's journey introduces her to a brilliant young woman. No spoilers about who it is, but I promise you will scream when you work it all out. And this female scientist becomes more than just a friend to her. Their relationship gradually blossoms into a passionate romance, offering Mary acceptance and opening the door to a whole new world. Insert magic carpet jokes here. This romance beautifully highlights the trope of found family, explored in a refreshingly different way from the most recent novel I reviewed featuring a queer Mary Bennet. In case you're interested, that novel was called The Unlikely Pursuit of Mary Bennet by Linz MacLeod, and I reviewed it for the second episode of this podcast. Through the connection formed in this novel, Mary gains the understanding and belonging she has longed for, providing a poignant look at love and identity in a society that often sidelines unconventional relationships. And now that we've unpacked the red pill, blue pill trope in the shocking experiments of Miss Mary Bennet, I want to point you toward a Hocus Tropus recommendation that discusses some of the same emotional and ethical issues. Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Now, in case you're new here, every episode I take one prominent trope from the main fanfiction book and recommend a second novel, one not set in the Austenverse, that contains the same trope but done differently. In Rogerson's story, Elizabeth is a young librarian in a world where magical books can literally become deadly. She faces choices that test her ethics, her trust in others, and her control over her own life. Decisions that, much like Mary's serum dilemma, have consequences she can't fully predict. Do you follow the rules and stay safe? Or take a risk that could change everything? That core tension echoes the red pill, blue pill question in Taub's novel. The lure of reality-altering knowledge versus the comfort of blissful ignorance. What makes this feel like a perfect Hocus Tropus fit is the way Rogerson weaves moral dilemmas with found family and romance throughout the novel, very much in the spirit of Mary's journey with her fellow scientist. Elizabeth's choices reshape her world, force her to confront difficult truths, and challenge her to embrace her own power and identity, all while keeping us on the edge of our seats. So, if you like the idea of seeing Mary wrestle with life, death, and agency, and the consequences of stepping off the safe path, Sorcery of Thorns offers a fresh magical twist on the same idea. And with this Hocus Tropus recommendation charmingly bespelled to you, I'm going to hop down from my digital soapbox and make my way backstage, as it were, to Cat's Corner, the part of the show where I pour us all a cuppa and spend a minute or two talking about whatever's on my mind. This episode has been extra special because it's the first time I've reviewed an advanced reader copy, or ARC, since launching this Jane Austen-inspired podcast earlier this year. For anyone unfamiliar, an ARC is a pre-publication edition of a book made available so reviewers like me can read it before it hits the shelves. In other words, it's how you get to experience new stories early and share your thoughts before anyone else. It brought back memories of when I was a wide-eyed university student applying with my housemate to Goodreads' ARC program. Back then, we were told the phase of the moon could affect approval. Did it really? In true nerd fashion, we kept a spreadsheet and found that actually the waning moon did indeed tip the odds, which made the whole experience incredibly whimsical. But now fast forward over a decade, and here I am, applying deliberately for Jane Austen-inspired stories, and finally receiving that magical yes. To be clear, I'd been rejected for half a dozen other novels, but this approval felt like a validation, a small key opening a secret passage into a world I love. It's a reminder that patience, persistence, and a little whimsy can pay off, and that eventually, perhaps, the right door will open if you hammer on it hard enough and for long enough. And that is all for today. If you've got this far, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this episode. And also, if you have made it this far, please consider following this podcast so you can join me on future rambles through the wilds of Jane Austen fanfiction. Until next time, may your tea stay hot, your tropes well executed, and your Mr. Darcy tolerable, I suppose.